Hello, everyone. Welcome to the More Sugar Podcast. I am your host, Amanda Calendar. And as usual, I hope everyone is having a great day so far. So, today I wanted to talk about funerals. And with the subject of funerals, so many other things came to mind because with funerals, there are obituaries. And in wanting to talk about funerals, I initially wanted to talk about all of the trauma around them. And when I say trauma, I don't necessarily mean the sadness of burying someone that's dead. I mean the fact that when if again all these conversations have generated from the book, my book, Sugar and My Grits, Grief to Gratitude Through Grace, available where all books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, jdelenopublishing.com. And if you need a signed copy, hit me up on any social media. I said all that to say in the beginning of the book, I speak about anxiety from kids that have been molested, and the family is still inviting the perpetrator to these family functions. And it's not just that this person is coming to the cookout. This person is at funerals. And I'm saying all that. What I'm trying to say is that funerals are a time of gathering, and it's normally when there's a funeral, you see a lot of people that you haven't seen in a long time, and since the last funeral. So there's no in between where there is discussions or uh, conversations about familial issues that everyone has. So, in my opinion, this is kind of what turns funerals into zoos. When I say zoos, it's so much infighting with families. And the last trail I put out, I said that I was thinking it was just from the black family standpoint. And a lot of my friends hit me up. It's like, no, other races have fallouts at funerals too. Well, I'm not other races. So I'm speaking about things I've been involved in and things that I've witnessed. And we just have to do better as a people and as a family, as far as planning, uh, as far as being mindful of people's relationships with each other, um, supporting each other, and carrying out our deceased loved ones' wishes accordingly, no matter how much we don't agree with what they want. That's what a person's last wishes normally are for them to be carried out, and not to any particular person's liking. And with that, again, um, funerals, I kind of wanted to sh- shift gears a little bit and speak about obituaries, because I literally just wrote an obituary um, for my wife's cousin. And the reason why I'm saying my wife's cousin and not my cousin is because I don't want anyone listening to think that my cousin, one of my cousins, died. When it's actually my cousin, but it's my wife's cousin. But I didn't want to set off any alarms. But in the event, he still is my family all the time. So with that being said, I don't know why I literally I wrote his obituary, and in doing that, it took me back to other obituaries that I've written. And it made me wonder, why am I the designated obituary writer? I don't think it has anything to do with me being an actual writer or author. I just think that give me some facts like birthday, death date, major accomplishments, and I can make you look good on paper, no matter how your life was. So my question became, excuse me, if there was no one like me to, for lack of a better word, embellish or make you look good on paper, what would your obituary look like? And in that thought, for me, I immediately started to think about my own obituary. What would I want my obituary to say? Besides, I was born February the 27th, and how I was an amazing manager, supervisor, wife, mother, and the day I died, the date of my death. I want my obituary to mean something, right? I want it to say that I broke generational curses. I wanted to say that I started conversations. And one thing we need to get out of our head, a lot of people think that they are breaking generational curses or having conversations, where people need to realize there's a difference between make sure that you're having healing conversations and you're not just out here gossiping. So, with that being said, as far as breaking generational curses, in my mind, I'm thinking I'm breaking these generational curses by making sure my son knows that he's loved, um, making sure that he doesn't have to worry about anything, um, trauma, and dealing with my own trauma so that I don't parent from that place. Whereas generational curses aren't just things of the mental. How can I say that um how can I consciously say that I'm breaking a generational curse when my grandmother, my paternal grandmother was overweight. She had high blood pressure and diabetes, both of them, right? Overweight. My paternal grandmother had a bad heart. My parents weren't overweight, but my grandparents, I would say, was. So everyone knows me. I could stand to lose some weight. So how can I say I'm breaking a generational curse if I have not made an effort to lose the weight to be around longer for my son? So if he sees pictures of his grandmother, great grandmother, who was overweight, he calls me squishy. It's the funniest thing ever. He just loves to rub and touch and squeeze my arms, my stomach. And he says, Mommy, you're so squishy. But squishy is not healthy. So, how can well, I know how I can. I have to lose weight to let him know that it's not okay to be overweight. It's not cute to be squishy. And so that's just one thing that I wanted to talk about. Like, and again, sometimes conversations involves questions, and sometimes we get up from conversations with um, more questions than answers. Sometimes conversations, most times our intent is to sit down and talk things out to get more clarity, and we get up from it even more conflicted. And I think that's what I feel like I'm doing in this episode. Like, I'm just talking through some things that's been on my mind. I don't have any words of wisdom. I just want to know, what is your obituary going to say? What have you done in your life to have inspired the generation, a generation? And we know, like, generation isn't just your kids. For me, generations would be my son's kids, right? So I have to set off a level of healing for 3 cycles. I have to break cycles, and with that is a big responsibility, and it comes with being honest with ourselves and starting these conversations and diving deep into things that make us uncomfortable. And my initial conversation started with the funeral. Like, that's where uh the fighting, and again, and the disagreeing, and the finger pointing, and it's just a lot, that I'm not even gonna say that people go through. I'm gonna say that I've been through. I can only speak for myself. And in the trail, I said that I haven't had a funeral. I haven't been to a funeral that was a good experience. And when I say that, I don't mean the actual ceremonial part of the funeral. Be- I mean the background. Like, when you go to Ringling Brothers Circus, it's the greatest show on earth. But we have no idea what goes on behind the scenes. Um, oh God, some things, like, I hate to talk about, because it brings up not just bad memories, but I try not to uh, drag, um, bring negative energy to situations. But some things are what they are. So, um, what can I say? Without I try to find a good in bad situations, and try to find a way to speak about it where I'm not bashing anybody, but there's just times that you can't. Um, so I'm gonna say my nephew's funeral, and I'm speaking about his funeral because um I'm sure some of my listeners was there. So nothing that I'm saying isn't anything that is um derogatory towards anybody involved, but that was definitely, it was rough for me, because I just wanted to see him put to rest, his body, and it was just so much bickering and disagreeing going on between the parents, that it didn't allow it didn't allow for me to grieve. And that's the thing, when you have all this bickering and fighting leading up to funerals, the day of, you're so filled with uh negative energy that your body cannot expel the sadness properly, because you're not even sure if you're uh crying behind your deceased loved one, or if you're crying because of what you had to deal with prior to this. Um, my mom, when I buried my mom, and when I buried her, I'm saying that my mom or my dad did not have life insurance. So when you have to bury someone, I mean financially. Like, okay, pause, drinking water. I don't know why my voice goes. I don't know if it's the time of me recording or what it is, but sometimes I feel like my voice just goes like Froggy from our gang and gets all Barry White on me. But anyway, um, my parents, when I say buried, I buried them. Well, not so much my dad, but he still didn't have life insurance. With my mom, I paid for that out of my pocket, and now I'm not complaining about it. But that was from improper planning on her part. And when people do not plan properly for the ending of their life, the responsibility is put on someone else and it interrupts their grieving. So when someone very close to you dies, you shouldn't be worried about how you're going to bury them in addition to carrying your grief. So I really want people to think about that and stop being selfish in that manner where you just kind of live life expecting, that your family will take care of it. But also, there's the flip side of that is it's rough out here. Some people survive check to check. And I know life insurance, if it's not given to you at a job that you work at, life insurance could be expensive. And sometimes people have to decide on eating dinner or paying life insurance. And I'm sure they're definitely going to feed themselves and their kids before they make a life insurance payment. And that's just a sad reality of the way things are and the way things have been. It just takes uh, a lot of planning. It's just crazy. It's so funny. It takes a lot of planning to have a baby, and it takes just as much planning to die. Like, right? So, who knew that? I didn't know growing up that I had to plan to die until I had to bury my mother. And so, again, um, what will your obituary say? Like, will your obituary say you was born on this date, you died on that day, what you worked here, uh, or is it going to be like the "Let's Go Crazy" song? Like, I don't know if "Let's Go Crazy" if that was necessarily like a wedding or a funeral because he talks about an afterlife. So, what will your obituary say? I keep saying that again and again because I can't help but to think about my own obituary and what would I want to leave my son. I want to leave him something besides his last name, a legacy. Our last name is not a legacy. A legacy is what you make it. Yeah. My last name is just family. It's just my familial connection to people of my bloodline. Again, my last name is just the familial connection to people with the same bloodline. It does not make you family. And I learned that lesson this weekend, this past weekend. And I don't think I'm ready to talk about that lesson yet, but God taught me a very, very, very important lesson about family not being people that you're related to. And I'm thankful that I was able to move through that lesson with forgiveness from the parties involved and understand what I need to pass on to my son to let him know that um, who his village is and people that love him, and it's not necessarily people with your last name. It's people that show up for you and people that know who you are and people that respect you and people that love you and someone that can write your obituary, someone that knows enough about you that can that don't have to fudge your obituary, that can actually say that you stood up for something, you stood for something, you meant you meant everything that you did, and you was a part of something special. You was out here breaking generational curses and healing transgenerational trauma and transgenerational trauma, like families with a history of unresolved trauma like depression, anxiety, and addiction, um, that passes through. It's a pattern that passes from one generation to the next, and people think that they're breaking these traumas by okay, my mom drank, so I'm not going to drink, so I'm going to break that generational curse. But that isn't the gist of it. These things need to be talked about. You PT some people, survivors of these traumas, have PTSD. And from my understanding, you can't work through PTSD unless it's talked about. So just because you think you stopped something or you're not participating in a particular habit, it does not mean that you're breaking generational curses or healing trauma. It has to be talked about in order to be healed. That's the point of me speaking, of me starting this podcast, to start healing conversations. Drinking water, because because all conversations, healing isn't always comfortable. All conversations aren't always comfortable, and people have that misconception that if we disagree, we're arguing. No, that's definitely not the case. Um, People need to be, I don't want to say confronted, because sometimes confrontation sets the tone for an argument. So we need to set tones for conversations. And I think that my podcast, that what I started, is the place to set the right tone, to have healing conversations. Whether people agree of what the other person is saying or not, we have to learn to respectfully disagree and move on and understand where the other person is coming from. So now that I'm saying it, that's one thing that I want in my obituary, that I had healing conversations, that this podcast was a catalyst to someone else's healing. So what is the use of me writing this book and quoting scriptures and these self-help books if I'm not actually doing the work to help someone else start a conversation? And with that, it becomes a domino effect. If this is uh, a healing space where people can come and talk and talk through their traumas and heal, and then they move on to the next person and to the next person and to the next person. And when I do something like that, it's funny thing, me and my son, I hadn't watched Pee Wee Herman, and the funniest part of the movie is when Pee Wee's talking about his bike, and he does this aggravating thing. My wife hates it. Sometimes me and my son goes, and her knitting, and her knitting, and her knitting, and her knitting. So just think about it like that, like healing generational curses and and working through trauma is a process that has to keep going and going and going and going. It just doesn't stop with you. We have to stop saying, okay, I broke the generational curse and it stops with me. No, it doesn't stop with you. You have to prepare someone else to break a generational curse so they can be prepared, and then that next person can be prepared. and then that next person can be prepared. And that's what healing conversations are. And I think it starts with, what will your obituary say that you did? Not that you had the most. I haven't seen an obituary that said how many followers someone had on social media, or how many Facebook friends they had, or how many likes they had. I dig that y'all like me and I have a sense of humor and I'm funny, but none of that is gonna go on my obituary, right? I want it to be said that I left my son with proud, that I helped him conquer, or I prevented things from reaching him by stopping them and assisting in other areas where he can help someone else. So it just brings me to the Prince song, like, dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to get through this thing called life, right? A world of never-ending happiness. You can always see the sun, day or night. Because in this life, things are much harder than in the afterworld. In this life, you're on your own. And if the elevator tries to bring you down, go crazy. Punch a higher floor. Like that, you let's go crazy. That's that was my rendition of trying to um, uh, pep someone up to do something. Like, what is your obituary gonna say? I'm not saying that you should be thinking about dying so you can write it. I mean, we should be thinking about living. Let your life speak for itself, so that when it's time to write your obituary, no one has to be looking around for fluffy words, or pulling up something that you done when you was 15. Oh, he learned to ride a bike at an early age. Nah, son. Nah. What is your obituary gonna say? Mine's, I want mine to say that I had these amazing conversations. I set the stage. I set up a space for people to heal, and I set up a space for people to come. I set up a space where people can talk. I set up a safe space where people can disagree and still um and still be not we don't have to be friends, but and still get along. I set up a space where friends that didn't speak started speaking again, because there was a better understanding of their hurt and their traumas that were reignited, that led to the demise of friendships. Um, that I want to be this be a space where someone say, you know what, I need to go see a therapist. That's what I want more sugar to be. So that more sugar is going to be in my obituary for sure. And so, again, sometimes conversations lead to more questions. So I'm going to leave you with the question: what is going to be on your obituary? Peace.